But if neither person is in the place to experience that because they don't believe they deserve it or whatever, they're not like aware enough of their own emotions, they're not emotionally regulated themselves, then what's going to happen is you're just going to keep repeating the same fucking cycle. You're going to manifest somebody where when you have an emotion that's hard to deal with or you feel insecure and you try and bring it up with them, they're going to go, whoa, that's way too much for me to handle. And they're going to like retreat even farther. And then you're going to be like, oh my God, he's pulling away. He's not answering, which is going to make you more manic and anxious. And then that's going to push him even farther away. Welcome to the Mindful Method podcast, where we don't just fill your ears, we fill your mind with the tools to enhance your emotional and physical reality. I'm your host, Jiordana Saade, here to guide you on this journey of the body-brain connection and help you take your power back to create the life you've always wanted. So grab a seat, because class is in session and our method is on the syllabus. Here at the Mindful Clinic, we're not just changing your mind, we're changing your life, one mindful moment at a time. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mindful Method podcast. Today we're going to be talking about why your first safe or secure relationship is actually the hardest one. So let me preface this with, obviously, if you're like a hopeless romantic lover girl like me, we all want to manifest the safe and secure relationship. Like, I think that ultimately, like, that's what the feminine, that's what the females, we want to experience, a safe and secure relationship. And so we're like, oh, I just want to feel protected. I just want to be in a consistent, safe relationship. I want a man who sees my value. I want a man who shows up for me. I want a man that takes the lead. Like, we want all of these things. And then when it's handed to us, if you're somebody who grew up with anxious attachment, so a lot of this is going to be about anxious attachment styles. If we're somebody who grew up with anxious attachment, or you have trauma in your life, you just like don't know what the fuck to do with it. And so I'm going to tell you this based from my perspective, obviously my experience, but also just from like doing research with other women who have gone through a similar trajectory. So what they don't tell you about being in a secure relationship is that this is the hardest relationship you're ever going to be in. You are going to want to repeat your programming versus confronting it or changing it. And you're going to want to assume that things are going to be inconsistent, that things are going to be insecure. And that is actually going to like block or put a wedge between you and the ability to actually receive the security, receive the safety. Okay, so I recently entered a new relationship, not entirely recently, like we've been dating since January. And I can quite honestly say, like, this has been the most interesting and healing experiences I have ever gone through. It's the most secure relationship I've ever experienced. I'm going to start by saying that it's not that I know for sure that this person is, it's not really about the specific person. It's not like this is my forever person. And like, it's more so that I spent my entire life going from one relationship to the next. And obviously, like, I was married for like 11 years. So there was a huge period there. But every single time that I would meet a new guy or I'd be dating, I would still go back into this like anxious attachment. And even with my ex-husband, I was fully in anxious attachment until like we were married and had kids, you know, and then I felt like, oh, okay, this guy's not going anywhere, but I still managed to self-sabotage because I just had the assumption, the programming, the script within me, the narrative that like, I'm not lovable, everyone will leave me, I'm going to be abandoned, I'm going to be rejected, etc. So the connection that I have now is easily the healthiest dynamic I've ever experienced. And because I am chronically anxious and a Virgo and I overthink everything and I have an anxious attachment style, I want to share how being in this first secure relationship has been really life-changing and what it's taught me. So let me backtrack and give you guys some backstory, okay? First of all, we actually met last May in this bar in Toronto. And nothing really came from it. Like, we like made out or hooked up or whatever, but like nothing came from it. And then we kept bumping into each other and still nothing. And so I really think too, one thing I want to preface here is that like divine timing is really important. Like, at the time when we first met and then the multiple times that we had run into each other, I actually wasn't in a place where I was able to really receive a secure and safe relationship. And I would say maybe even this, I don't want to speak for him, but I would say maybe even the same goes for my partner. Like, he might not have been able to provide safety and security to a woman at that point in his life. Like, he was going through his own journey, right? But when we talk about anxious attachment, like this isn't just with men. And that's why I want to share this with you guys, because anxious attachment is going to show up in so many other areas. It's going to show up in your bank account. It's going to show up in your relationship to food, and pretty much in all of your connections, all of your relationships. The energy is to access security, right? And we try and access security through all of these different ways, right? But there's like this desperate need, and I'm using the word desperate for a reason, because that's where the anxiousness comes in. Because when we actually don't feel safety within ourselves, we have this desperation to grasp onto whatever the fuck is going to give us this illusion of safety. So the energy is like the narrative of the anxious attachment is access to security is not inevitable. Therefore, I'm not safe. And therefore, I need to grasp tightly to the illusion of safety through this specific person or money or a substance in order to make myself feel temporary satisfaction. People with an anxious attachment style often manifest avoidant attachment partners. And this actually was my tendency for so long, right? Like this is the like hilarious dichotomy of like anxious attachment versus avoidant attachment, because we're, as somebody who has an anxious attachment is walking around with the energy of like, I'm not safe, it's going to be taken away from me, like nothing is secure. And so if you're emitting that frequency, you're going to literally magnetize the opposite of that, right? Like, so it's like you're going to magnetize somebody who's going to validate, or not the opposite, like attracts like, right? So you're emitting this frequency, this worry of I'm going to be abandoned, I'm going to be rejected, and you're literally calling in the man, the inconsistent job, the like an unhealthy relationship with food. You're calling in these experiences to validate the truth of I'm not lovable, I'm going to be rejected, I'm going to be abandoned. So people that have an avoidant attachment style, and actually that's a whole other podcast, and I've actually done a podcast on anxious versus avoidant attachment styles. It's an older one, so you guys can go back and listen to it. But people that have an avoidant attachment style want to avoid conflict at all costs, right? But the problem with the person with an anxious attachment style is they're creating conflict in their own brain because their nervous system is so chaotic that when they have these emotions, these irregular emotions, and they make assumptions on this person doesn't like me anymore, they're not going to call me back, that's going to push the avoidant attachment style even farther away. Now, both these people, if you meet somebody with an avoidant attachment style and you have an anxious attachment style, both these people can come together and heal together. And it can be this beautiful experience where you're both evolving and transforming. And it's just like so juicy and delicious. But if neither person is in the place to experience that because they don't believe they deserve it or whatever, they're not like aware enough of their own emotions, they're not emotionally regulated themselves, then what's going to happen is you're just going to keep repeating the same fucking cycle. You're going to manifest somebody where when you have an emotion that's hard to deal with or you feel insecure and you try and bring it up with them, they're going to go, whoa, that's way too much for me to handle. And they're going to like retreat even farther. And then you're going to be like, oh my God, he's pulling away. He's not answering, which is going to make you more manic and anxious. And then that's going to push him even farther away. Before I met my current partner, I literally went to hell and back, like quite honestly, in the most toxic relationship I have ever experienced. And this is very much so a personal thing. But for me, I would so much rather be broken up with or rejected openly than have things be hidden from me. Right. So part of the anxiety with somebody who has this anxious attachment style, it's not even necessarily the actual act of like, this person has expressed to me they don't want to be with me. It's the fear of that. It's the anticipation of that. And as we know, it's the same chemical in the nervous system that's released for anticipation or excitement, right? And so what's happening is like there's unknown that's happening. It's like we're walking in unknown territory or blindfolded and we're just like assuming the fucking worst. It's the fear of being rejected. But the actual rejection itself is not the hard part. Then you can like heal. I'm like, please fucking, if you don't want to be with me, break up with me now. Like, tell me right now. I don't want the wool to be pulled under over my eyes, right? And so the anxiety doesn't actually come from the rejection itself. It comes from the fear of being hurt. It comes from not knowing what the fuck is going on. And I'm so tapped into my intuition. I've been working on it for so long and it's so fucking loud that I basically, like in this past toxic relationship, I didn't like eat or sleep for weeks because I knew something was hidden under the surface and it wasn't like being shown to me. And this relationship tested me in so many ways. Like there was a lot of betrayal, a lot of deception, there was a lot of gaslighting, and my savior complex was very much so activated intensely because ultimately, I think I did fall in love with this person, or at least I fell in love with the dream that was like sold to me, right? And at the time, I thought I would never love anybody the way I loved him. So cute of Jordana. Will blame my Cancer moon and my Venus and Libra for that. But this relationship ended in November, and it took me months to start feeling like a human again. I dated a couple of people in between, and after coming home from like literally the worst date ever, I remember like journaling, and I was like angry with the universe. I was like, am I ever going to find anyone who is remotely close to my standard? Probably not on Bumble. Like universe, throw me a fucking bone here. And right at that moment, one of my friends messaged me, and she, like within seconds of me being like, universe, please. And she told me that her boss thought I was hot. And she was like, hey, like, can I set you up on a date with my boss? And now this is a guy who owns a multiple seven-figure business, the company, travels the world and eats at the best restaurants like for a living. And I'm like, okay, universe, this is literally the vision. You get it. Thank you so much. I was so excited about this. I pretty much planned out the next 6 months of my life, assuming I would be on every flight with him, assuming I would be like eating in Bangkok or like Thailand or like whatever it is, right? But ironically, that same week, I had another date with the guy that I met in May, who matched with me on Bumble in January. And I decided to go on the date for pure intrigue because we already had a connection. And you know, I remember it being like a good night. I remember enjoying myself and kind of wondering like what happened there. And to my surprise, we had a really, really good time. Like the connection was strong. He's a gentleman. I'm obviously very attracted to him, and conversation was easy, and we were aligned on many things, and he made me feel like the prettiest girl in the world, which truly I think is really important in a relationship. And it wasn't even like fully with his words, it was in the way he looked at me and like held space for me and was interested in my perspective on things. Like it was really, really sweet. Hi, babes. I am so excited to talk to you about my signature program, The Mindful Method. This is the exact same method that I have been using with hundreds of successful clients to help you heal your relationship to food, to increase confidence, and to lose weight without dieting or killing yourself at the gym. If you're sick of not feeling like your best self, if you're sick of promising yourself that you'll start again on Monday, if you're sick of going on restrictive diets only to gain back the weight, I can tell you right now that if you gained it back, it did not work. You know what's healthy and what's not. You do. You just continue to choose the unhealthy option anyways. And a meal plan will not solve this issue. There is no amount of restriction or discipline or willpower that is going to stop you from self-sabotaging. The body follows the mind. Imagine a life where you don't have to think about what you can or can't eat. Imagine a life where you feel confident in all of your clothes, where every day in every way your body rebalances and you lose all of the weight so you find the truest, healthiest version of yourself. Imagine never having to start again on Monday. This is what happens when you focus on transforming the brain so weight loss is effortless. The body follows the mind, and it's time you actually get to the root cause of your issue. If you are ready to transform and find the truest, healthiest version of you without letting go of your favorite foods, I invite you to fill out the application in my bio. And if you're a good fit, we'll be in touch soon. Back to regular programming. So I'm going to go into some of the errors or like the rules of anxious attachment styles that keep us stuck in insecure relationships. But when we meet someone, we are so unsure that another person will come. So we grasp onto the first thing that comes to us for dear life, literally convincing ourselves that why this person is right for you. So like example of the toxic relationship I had, like there were so many things that were like right about it, and so many things that that person could have given me to experience a life beyond what I had experienced before. Like he was very wealthy, he's in the health industry, we had a lot of common goals, but because I was so unsure that something better would come along, I held on to it so tightly, far beyond its expiration date, right? Like far beyond. Like I dealt with shit, and I was like, oh, well, like, I'm not going to get anything better. So I'm going to like hang on to this, right? Or like, what if this is the person for me? But your nervous system doesn't even tell you I'm not going to get anything better because you want to believe like this or better, right? What happens is your subconscious mind kicks in. And this is where the anxious attachment comes, where you're trying to find safety and security. And it sounds like rationalization. You're rationalizing why this person is behaving so poorly. Well, he has mother wound issues. Oh, he had a shitty childhood. Like, that's why he is this way. He loves me. So whatever, XYZ. But I couldn't actually do this rule. Like I couldn't grasp on to the new relationship, like with the man. Let's give him a name. Okay. So the current partner that I'm dating, let's name him Adam. And I couldn't grasp on to Adam because I already had the CEO guy in mind. We'll call him CEO, the one that my friend told me about, right? And so I like in my mind, I was like, well, I'm going to be with the CEO guy. So it really took the pressure off of me and my current partner. So in those beginning stages, I really didn't go into anxious attachment because I wasn't grasping onto it, right? Like I wasn't like allowing these patterns to resurface because in my mind, I was like, I'm kind of already here. So I'm just going to let this play out and see what happens. And like, I mean, it sounds kind of shitty and like I'm not happy, like, it's not like nice to admit it, but I'm really fucking grateful for that because it taking the pressure off of the situation with me and my current partner really allowed us to build a relationship in this like slow and steady burn. Anyways, I agreed to see him again, and slowly but surely it turned into something like really quite incredible, but I don't even know that I would have been able to let it get to that point if didn't if I didn't have this idea of I might be with somebody else that in my mind at that time I thought was a better match for me, because I would have put so much pressure on it has to be this person. And then when we put pressure like that on, oh, it has to be this person, we begin to self abandon, and things that would not be compatible with us, we self abandon and make them compatible with us or convince ourselves that we're compatible with that person for fear of losing that connection. Because in our mind, it's not about that person, it's not about that connection, it's about safety. And without that person, that one person, we have insecurity. We feel like we're not safe. And so the connection with me and my partner was really like slow and steady burn, and it felt really safe, but it was like never boring. It was like really fun. And he was very consistent, consistently contacted me, always responded. Every part of me, even though I knew I would hear from him, every part of me continued to go back into that bullshit narrative of like, what if he doesn't respond? What if he hooks up with somebody else? What if he like doesn't call when he says he's going to call? Like that narrative still kind of exists. But every time I felt insecure, literally he always showed up and held space for me. And so I'm gonna like tell you how fucking crazy I am sometimes. This is gonna be like really hilarious and vulnerable. But one night I had a lot of anxiety. I knew he was going out, and he like always goes to these places where like ex-girlfriends are there or whatever. And it like was stressing me out one night. I don't actually mind that he goes out. I want him to have fun. And I do trust him. But this was like earlier on. But one night I had this like really bad anxious feeling. And then I went to bed and had this dream that he hooked up with somebody when he was out. And I saw him the next day, and he was like, "Okay, something's off. What's wrong?" And I was like, "I know that you hooked up with someone last night." And he was like, "Whoa, okay. How do you know that?" I'm like, "Well, I'm psychic and I had a dream." And he's like, okay, well, and the reason why I'm telling you this and why it's so funny is because in past relationships, if I had ever felt that way, I would never, ever, ever be so vulnerable to admit how crazy I am. Because the thing with anxious attachment people is like, we don't want anyone to know how crazy we are. We don't want people to know we're anxiously attached. So we like hide what we're thinking and feeling, but then it comes out in other ways. And then we end up in resentment, defensiveness, like all this other bullshit, right? And so anyways, he was like, okay, let's sit down and talk about this. I actually didn't even go out last night. I ended up sleeping on my friend's couch. Do you want to see like, my visa bill to know? And I was like, no, I don't need to see that. And like, when he's like talking to me about this in a very regulated way, I'm like, basically like backing up into a corner being like, oh, what's wrong with like, I was totally off on that. And I'm starting to feel really silly and like kind of sheepish. And his reaction to my insanity was like, that was kind of cute. I was like, what? Any other guy would be like literally running for the fucking hills right now. But this was so important. This was a huge turning point in our relationship because what it showed me is that even when my emotions are completely erratic, even when my emotions are totally out of this world, not sane, it's not pushing him away. And when I feel the safety to be able to experience my emotions in its creative flow, I'm so much less likely to go into an emotional place where I'm going to sabotage the relationship, you know? And so the second thing, the error number two, is anxious attachment people never truly say what they feel and feel what they say because they're so afraid of their emotions. They're so afraid that their emotions are going to be too big for the other person. And so what they do is they try and turn them off and like so that they're not abandoned. But really, because they're so afraid of their emotions, they're never actually fully expressing themselves. So they're not showing up with honesty. And once they learn, hey, if I'm honest about how I feel and what I'm thinking, even if it's totally crazy, when that can be accepted and received and you guys can work together, you can actually heal that process. Right. And so when they're hiding their true emotions and they try to play it cool, which literally means they actually never ask for what they need, therefore, they will always be disappointed because if you can't ask for what you need, like, how are you going to get what you want? You know, wouldn't you rather ask for what you need from somebody and potentially get a no, potentially get that rejection, than forever be with somebody who has no idea how to handle you, no idea how to meet your expectations because you've never been fully honest? So the connection is built on a lie, essentially, and then nobody is satisfied. And so being the cool girl is only making the wrong man stay. Let's get that straight. In this connection, slowly but surely, me and my partner, like, because he showed up for me so much, he showed me that it was safe for me to like express myself. And even if it was totally irrational, he sat me down and listened to me and reassured me and shared his perspective in a very calm state, like with a very regulated nervous system. It's very fucking masculine. It was very hot. Then we were able to resolve the potential conflict, which essentially brought us closer together. So part of the key here is that usually people with anxious attachment end up driving their partners away because they are manifesting an emotionally unavailable person to begin with, but they drive them away because they don't feel safe enough to show up honestly. And when a safe space is cultivated, communication is clear, it's usually non-offensive. And therefore, there's a lower likelihood that the partner is going to become defensive, right? So if I had already had a secure attachment style, I probably wouldn't have created a narrative of like, you went out and hooked up with somebody last night. Like I would never do that, like, because I know that that didn't happen, right? But because I hadn't developed this emotional safety in the relationship yet, it came out that way. And when it was received and can grow together and it was a safe space, then like now my brain doesn't go to that place, right? So you are so used, if you're listening to this and you have an anxious attachment style, you were so used to men playing games with you and being like hot and cold and men like running away from their emotions and yours, that when you meet somebody who actually shows up for you, it's very confusing. And sometimes you might still get these random bouts of anxiety and create narratives in your head that like follows the old pattern, which creates unnecessary worry or assumed tension between you and your partner just because you're used to it. And so what I want to tell you in closing is that if you're listening to this and you have an anxious attachment style and you want to manifest a secure relationship, it's almost like this is my warning to you guys that like it's first of all totally possible and you'll manifest it when you're ready to experience it and when you're ready to actually confront yourself and grow and like receive it. But it's going to be one of the hardest relationships you'll ever be in because it's going to require you to change the narrative around safety, and it's going to require you to like stop going back into the old programming, the old identity of I deserve to be abandoned, I'm going to be rejected, etc. And it's going to force you to actually like learn to open up your heart enough to trust somebody. And the number one thing that is going to allow you to do this is you not being afraid of your own emotions, even if they're fucking crazy. Like if I had went to my partner and I had been like, I know you hooked up with somebody, and he was like, that's fucking crazy, leave right now. Like at least I showed up with honesty and how I was feeling. That person is now then able to receive it or not receive it. right? And the people who don't receive it aren't the ones for you, and that's okay. But at least when you learn to show up with honesty, you're going to actually be able to call in a connection who is going to be able to receive it. And I think that that's kind of the moral of the story. And so, anyways, I hope you guys found some value in this podcast. I've gotten so much good feedback around my takes on dating. Maybe we should just like totally flip the script from eating and weight loss to just like now we're dating. But also, my Venus is in Libra, and Venus is the planet of like love and money. And so, and abundance. And so, my vocation, my like purpose is actually like around love and partnerships, because that's very Libra. So anyways, I hope you guys like this podcast. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with somebody who might need it. And I will see you back on another episode of the Mindful Method podcast. Bye.